According to Girard, violence is a shadow of mimetic rivalry. We desire what others desire, and that desire fosters conflict. In part 1, we saw it in, among others, Eren. His craving and hunger weren't his alone. They developed from those he admired. This trend appears throughout all individuals within a society. Personal wants and enmities are then shaped by society into something structured, even sacred as Girard terms it. Here in part 2, the ties that bind us, we will begin our explorations of the institutions with the Scapegoat. More than a band of heroes, it's an organization that turns admiration into ritual and personal ambitions into a group system, thereby controlling chaos. The Corps' mission and their sacrifices are deliberate, not random. What Eren admired, heroes riding beyond the walls, is genuine, yet beneath this heroism lies a deeper function. Girard calls it sacred violence, bloodshed given meaning, channeled through chosen victims in order to protect the whole. The Corps does more than fight titans, functioning as a system, a machine that ritualizes death and transforms loss into a sacred act. Every expedition beyond the walls is a deliberate offering. Soldiers sent out knowing many won't return. It sanctioned violence, a measured dose of blood to delve into the unknown and retrieve something precious. The Corps ceremonially marches in order, their purpose cloaked in duty. Their loss is a price paid for stability within. At the same time, being agents who operate on the outside of societal boundaries, they were also viewed with suspicion. Every opening to the outer world may bring prosperity, but danger as well, and it's a long time since they brought back anything valuable. Like the animals in ancient sacrificial rituals, or humans for that matter, Corps members are set apart from ordinary society, marked and consecrated for a higher purpose. Their liminal status between life and death mirrors the traditional sacrificial victim, whose killing was believed to bring stability and renewal to the community. And the soldiers know it. They choose this by willingly stepping towards near certain death with little hope for glory and riches. Effective sacrificial victims often consent, and their acceptance makes the sacrifice potent. Death has something holy. The living salute the fallen with reverence. Violence becomes transcendent, tying the Corps to the society it champions. They embody a structured violence, ritualized and held up as noble. A longing for freedom and honor values humanity inside the walls is losing hopes for. The Wings of Freedom insignia illustrates this. Wings spread wide that lift bloodshed into meaning for the last survivors of mankind. It's on their uniforms and their memorials, a sign of sacredness. Like the garlands and brands placed on animals marked for offering, this emblem designates them as both exceptional and expendable, the process sealed by their motto, "Dedicate your hearts." Now we turn to the Wall Cult, the other face of sacred violence within the last human kingdom. Where the Scapegoat channels violence outward, the cult turns it inward, worshipping the very walls that cage them. Here religion lives up to its etymology, from religare to bind, as the cult literally binds society to its own confinement. Girard's theory says that societies disguise violence as protection, cloaking it in reverence. The walls are a divine gift of safety against the horrors outside, the titans, but we see the irony. Those walls hold titans inside them, a secret the faithful don't even suspect, but that the inner circle knows all too well. Theirs is also veneration of the hidden chaos within the walls themselves. This is sacred violence in pure form, worshipping the threat you fear, turning destruction into salvation. Paradise itself epitomizes this. Its Japanese name, Raquin, means Eden or pleasure garden. It promises a paradise on earth, and yet it's a prison, a false Eden, a fake sanctuary built on violence instead of grace. Where Eden hosted sinless humans before their fall, Paradise holds them captive because of their sins. Institutions thrive on controlled knowledge, failing violence to keep power and order intact. Hobbes' Leviathan made manifest. But cracks eventually form. Eren's piercing question to Eren, "Who do you think the real enemy is here?" strikes at the heart of Party's sacred order. It's the first tremor to their foundations, hinting that the threat they fear may not be what it seems. This is part of what Girard called the crisis of differentiation, when the boundaries between ally and threat, inside and outside, begin to dissolve and suspicion spreads. When in Stoics, while seen as cracked, the cult's sacred boundary gets hit, and the violence within shows its face, and it's staring back. Riffing on the title of one of Girard's seminal books, Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the Walls. These organizations show how society channels desire into order through ritual and belief, but like all things in the universe, even social structures deteriorate as entropy advances. The walls won't hold forever, however rooted institutions rely on an even deeper mechanism to hold society together, a pattern that directs violence itself and sits at the foundation of all social order. At the heart of social dynamics, Girard shows us the scapegoat, a vessel that absorbs tensions that build up when conflicting desires collide. When rivalries threaten to tear communities apart, unrest intensifies and groups look for someone to blame, someone to vent their frustrations onto without disrupting the system if possible. These victims must seem powerful enough to be the cause of society's ills, yet weak enough to be cast out safely. Their sacrifice doesn't solve the true problem, but masks it, buying a temporary peace at a price. Crucially, this mechanism only works in its typical form when not perceived. Girard contends that once scapegoating is exposed, it can no longer function in the same way as its effectiveness is based on collective blindness. Persecutors must believe in the guilt of their victim and see their violence as justice rather than a convenient way to keep institutions in place. This unconsciousness explains why the revelation of truth, like the knowledge within the basement in Attack on Titan, poses such a threat to the entire system. However, as Girard notes, seeing the mechanism doesn't simply make conflict fade away, but may intensify it with lethal consequences, as we'll see later on. Though the scapegoat ends up enveloping entire populations, it often begins with a primal figure who epitomizes the process, a founding figure. In this story, this is founder Ymir, whose compassionate act triggers a centuries-long curse. Millennia before the events we witness, in a small village some pigs escaped from captivity, and Ymir was accused of setting them free. In cruel irony, King Fritz declared, "You're free," but this freedom meant she was also free from all protection, and so she was hunted down through the forest like sacrificial game. Ymir's character embodies the Girardian scapegoat, while also paralleling the ancient Roman figure of Yeager, one who is excluded from society and can be killed with no legal consequences, yet interestingly cannot be sacrificed in regular religious rituals. First condemned for disrupting the social order, she will subsequently be elevated to divine status as the founder. This mythologization obscures the arbitrary violence behind her selection and establishes the founding narrative for an entire civilization. What works with one person can scale to a whole race, forging order through blame, and in Attack on Titan, Eldians are the prime target. Burdened with a brutal power that is feared and reviled, they're the collective scapegoat for the whole of humanity to point a finger at. Marley brands Eldians devils, a curse to unite against. All Marleyan citizens find general agreement in this. Loathing of the Eldians unites them and smooths over their own disputes. A shared antagonism that builds cohesion on the backs of the despised, forging consensus even with nations with which they're at war. Scapegoating, according to Girard, looks for a marker to distinguish the victim, and the signs of Eldian victimization are straightforward. They are marked out with armbands, blatant indicators of exclusion, a clear allusion to the Third Reich's persecution of Jews. Eldians live segregated in boxed-in districts within Marley's internment zones, explicitly separated from the rest of the population. The system shuns Eldians, singling them out to make their suffering a cornerstone of social order. Myths are propagated to support this persecution, tales of Eldian atrocities which we shall never learn to what extent are actually true. These are more than mere stories, they are tools of social control. The scapegoating mechanism leverages on an established past, be it authentic or artificial, to validate the present condition. Marley paints Eldians as monsters of the past, a persistent and powerful myth. The scapegoating process differs from legitimate attribution of responsibility. Though Girard called for us to examine how blame operates in society, he never denied actual culpability. The danger lies not in dispensing guilt, but in wielding allegations as a tool for collective violence. Attack on Titan handles this masterfully. Characters like Zeke bear real responsibility for the massacres they carried out, or the ancient Eldians who indeed oppressed other populations. The series demonstrates how real culpability can lead to unjustified persecution, especially when entire societies turn old grudges into moral licenses for modern injustice. Marley's oppression is based upon a terrible inversion. Despite actively subjugating Eldians, they present themselves as the history's victims. Past Eldian dominance serves as a moral shield which frames Marleyans as virtuous avengers seeking rectification for past wrongs. What makes this process so insidious is the perpetrator's conviction in their moral purity. They're administering justice, not committing crimes, like the French revolutionaries who turned valid grievances into indiscriminate brutality during the Terror. It's the transition from real suffering to extreme revenge with a conviction of one's own exceptional justification. Every indignity imposed on Eldians, armbands, ghettos, military conscription, is warranted as necessary defense against the Titan threat. Protection from hypothetical violence justifies actual violence. The ultimate perversity of the scapegoating process is that it reproduces itself through the righteous outrage of those who claim victimhood. By wearing the mask of the oppressed, the oppressor retains his power. But the most haunting aspect of Eldian subjugation isn't their persecution but their internalization of it, an uncanny reflection of Ymir's own submission to King Fritz. Just as Ymir continued to serve the man who enslaved her, many Eldians in Marley become loyal servants to their oppressors. Like Reiner's mother, many push their children toward military service, reinforcing the very system that degrades them. Gabi embodies this perfectly with her zealous dedication to proving the only good Eldian is a loyal one. They've become guardians of their own cage. But there's a twist. Eldians embody what Girard calls the pharmakon, or pharmakos, an ancient Greek term for the sacrificial victim, or something that functions as both poison and remedy, from which the word pharmacy, for example, is derived. Scapegoats unconsciously serve this dual role. They're blamed as the source of society's ills, yet through their sacrifice become the cure. Marley hates Eldians, yet depends on them as their Titan powers fuel its wars. Like the biblical mark of Cain, the warriors' red armbands both condemn and protect, branding them as outcasts while preserving them as weapons. It's a fragile balance, always teetering on the edge of collapse, as the scapegoat mechanism needs constant work to keep it functioning in the long term. To truly understand this system, we must look at its underlying power, the very force that marks Eldians for exclusion while making them indispensable. The Titan power is the pounding heart of the whole story. It inspires terror and awe. No wonder it is also called the Titan Curse. Hajime Isayama uses them as more than simply monsters. They reflect the reality of a hidden violence holding society together. To the kingdom inside the walls, they are a terror, a threat that with good reason justifies the fear, the walls and the order, a force beyond comprehension, mindless monsters who offer no possibility of communication. They devour humans, that's the only thing that matters about them if you want to survive. But then comes the revelation. Titans were humans once, Eldians, the same people as they are. The line between accuser and accused blurs. Us and them, human and monster, those distinctions collapse. What was built to contain violence turns out to be part of it. Every shifter Titan transformation requires a self-sacrifice, blood drawn and pain endured with specific intent, an imitation of the agony suffered by Ymir, their matrix. This ritual shows what Girard understood. Sacrifice always stalks desire. Eldians must deliberately draw their own blood to transform, an act of commitment to the violence they wish to draw upon, a purpose pure Titans lack. Each transformation shows how power and desire grow together, extending the ability to affect more, control more, destroy more. The transformations are marked by lightning strikes, brilliant flashes that split the sky. This resonates with Girard's book title, I See Satan Fall Like Lightning, which comes from a New Testament passage. It's illumination that discloses what was hidden. These lightning bolts don't just signal transformation, but expose the monstrous force concealed within ordinary bodies. The flash illuminates the violence hiding beneath human form, making visible the potential for destruction that exists within the seemingly innocent. Girard's observation that revelation occurs as a bolt from heaven, shedding light on what we couldn't or wouldn't see, is echoed in each flash. There is also a scientific angle through which to decipher this, the Miller-Urey experiment, where the building blocks of life, amino acids, were formed from primordial inorganic compounds via electricity. The lightning of transformation even recalls the electric impulses from our nervous system, activating muscles of the body, a biological command transmitted through neural pathways. In Attack on Titan, violence and desire are framed as being at the very essence of life. As we'll see later on, there is a strong biological element to the mechanisms that govern this world. The Titan powers promise formidable strength, a weapon that Marley readily wields against its opponents. Girard, however, would see their powers as a stumbling block, a scandalon. Their reliance turns into their downfall, as the more they utilize them, the more tightly the spiral coils. Control slips towards chaos, and advantage turns to vulnerability. The Titans are no mere instruments to use and discard. A darker irony is also at play here. Marley exploits the Titans, thereby creating the very monster they profess to fight. By casting Eldians as devils, they forge their own demise. When Marleyan forces breach Wall Maria, they are creating their enemy, their persecutor, generating what it fears, a self-fulfilling prophecy of violence. By treating others as monsters, we shape them into what we accuse them of being. The Titans also echo an ancient biblical parallel, the Nephilim, giant offspring born from the union of fallen celestial beings and human women. These primordial figures in Genesis occupy an in-between state, existing as neither entirely human nor divine. Their actions are incited the cruelty and barbarity that led to the flood. Nephilim and Titans portray the intrusion of a power beyond typical human limits. Even their physical size signals their symbolic importance, giants that make humans small, quasi-divine might that dwarfs human authority, an unholy violence which, according to Girard's theory, is equivalent to sacred violence. Both emerge from a transgression of the natural order, the Nephilim from forbidden unions between fallen angels and humans, Titans from emirs merging with a parasite, the otherworldly chthonic entity, a mingling of realms that ought to have stayed separate. In apocryphal texts, the Nephilim transmitted forbidden knowledge to humanity, and likewise each Titan transformation denotes a boundary infringement with a literal blood price, reinforcing the recurring pattern of power and sacrifice that remain inseparable. The Titans' ability to pass down their power through spinal fluids consumption, and the Nephilim's inheritance of divine attributes creates lineages characterized by extraordinary power and extraordinary violence, a legacy of boundary violation that both stabilizes and destabilizes the social order. The Nephilim imparted esoteric knowledge to mankind in the form of technology that amplified human power beyond its natural limits. Titans serve the same function for the Eldians, endowing them with an extension of their capabilities to go beyond what is normally possible for humans. This transmission of power, divine to human, parasite to Eldian, creates the same outcome, a civilization whose technical advantage stems from a transgressive source. Both gifts are double-edged. The Nephilim's knowledge corrupts humanity while empowering it. The Titan powers elevate Eldians while enveloping them in cycles of violence. Both foreshadow apocalyptic consequences, flood and rumbling, catastrophic punishments that nearly erase humanity. This parallel extends to modern technology itself. As other nations develop anti-Titan weaponry, they engage in the same boundary-crossing pursuit of power. Marley's military advancements create a mimetic arms race, pushing them to seek the founding Titan when their advantage wanes. This creates a technical spiral. If Titan powers are treated like a technical tool, we enter the logic of technical problems demand technical solutions, which in turn require more technical power. Girard asserts that technological progress doesn't escape the cycle of violence but accelerates it, each innovation intensifying the clash. Solutions sought within the system only serve to strengthen its drive. From Nephilim teachings to Titan powers to modern weapons, the pattern persists. Humanity's reach for godlike power aggravates the mimetic spiral. True escape would require stepping outside this feedback loop entirely, a possibility the world of Attack on Titan struggles to imagine. The unraveling is destined to grow. Titan powers are harbingers of doom to come. Like the word monster from the Latin monstrum, to show, warn or foretell, they demonstrate what's hidden in plain sight, violence laid bare. Now that we've taken a deep look into the nature of the Titans, let's continue with the social institutions. We have seen the wall cult praying to warding stones and the Servicore channeling death into ritual, but at the center sat the Fritz monarchy, a hollow core, its power resting on wiped out memory. Their peace is a myth, the rule a void, just like the Puppet King's mind, a facade hiding the Rice family who is pulling the strings from the shadows. The first king of parodies, Karl Fritz, laid the foundations for this realm. His order to renounce war and quietly die in isolation turned Eldians into scapegoats, exiled from the rest of the world. Drawing from his quasi-divine powers, he remodeled the kingdom from its architecture to the minds of the population. Inside the walls he concealed Titans, the actual pillars of this utopian world, while through the coordinate he manipulated the memories of his people and erased any trace of their past. History was buried under lies and deceptions. However, as Girard warns, repressed violence lurks. A tragic aspect of this is that Karl Fritz was probably one of the very few who truly recognized the Girardian predicament. He witnessed the Eldian Empire's centuries of conquest and domination, the mimetic cycles of revenge and counter-revenge. This is what Ritualized called the terror of history, humanity's existential anxiety when confronting linear time filled with meaningless suffering. Unlike others who justified the violence, Fritz sought to break free from these patterns entirely. But as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The Fritz monarchy's real crime was stopping time, the attempt to halt the march of history. The founding titan did more than just build walls. It froze yearning for the outside world, prevented competition with other nations, and produced a society devoid of the ordinary mimetic drive. They believed they could put an end to violence itself, to serve Ichor's futile deaths by mauling, an acceptable sacrifice to maintain the illusory peace. The stasis echoes Ymir's own condition in the paths, both locked outside of time, although for very different reasons. Karl Fritz chose imprisonment for his people to escape the cycles of slaughter, whereas Ymir became trapped as a result of a small act of compassion, freeing pigs from their pen. One was the architect of his own cage, while the other was the victim, accused of opening one. The first king's desire doesn't die with him, but is passed down like a ghost haunting each bearer of the founding titan, generation after generation. Mimetic desire is perfected, rising above copied behavior to become literally transmitted will. Yuri Rise, Frida Rise, each possessed by the same passive longing for a false peace, the same wish to remain confined, an impulse flowing through blood, bypassing choice. Historia breaks this chain not just politically but mimetically by refusing the desire that ruled generations before. Her choice to reject her father's will marks a break in their lineage and opens the dam. This paves the way to Grisha's secret in the basement. The past surges back, and along with it, the chaos that Fritz believed they had buried. Her accomplice in this deed is Eren, who instead of toppling the system seizes it. Once a tool of passivity, the founding titan will become a mighty instrument that dictates the flow of history. The king's peace, his world without war, ends up letting out all the bottled up brutality it held within. Karl Fritz tried to stop mimetic violence by pulling away from it completely, but Eren responds by embracing it fully. Eren is the catalyst that breaks chains, the monarchy's grip, and later on Ymir's timeless cage. His vow, "I'll destroy them," restarts the clock with ruin and no redemption. It's not just rejection of the king's passive surrender, it's a violent return of history to a kingdom built on its absence. The name Historia, hardly a coincidence. The Fritz monarchy crystallized time in a false Eden, contact with the outside world suspended, along with their own history. But on the other side of the sea, the Tybur family twists that pattern into something even more shrewd. Girard frequently points to ancient kings and rulers who were sacrificed during crises to restore a world in turmoil and bring back harmony, a theme explored in his book Violence and the Sacred. The Tyburs turned this completely upside down. Eldians by blood, therefore related to those oppressed, they transformed that burden into power through a carefully crafted tale of redemption. The Rice Fritz and the Tyburs wield power through the same conniving methods. The Rice family erases history, while the Tyburs spin one of noble betrayal, both steering their respective nations from the shadows. They reinvent ancient rituals into modern forms by exploiting oppression via displays of humility. The Tyburs present themselves as the good Eldians, betrayers of the ruthless King Fritz and wielders of the Warhammer Titan in service of Marley. Ancient rulers sat on thrones and met their end as victims, but the Tyburs turned this on its head by funneling violence onto their own kind while standing at the apex of Marley's ranks. Both dynasties reveal an essential truth of governance and management. Power that remains hidden can orchestrate violence and control the narrative while escaping the consequences of the rule. Willie Tybur confesses to his family's conspiracy, elaborated with Karl Fritz himself, which became the founding myth for their warlord. Yet he isn't simply manipulating events only for power. Like the first ruler of Paradise before him, he faces what he perceives as an existential threat. When he tells Magath that he's going to need his help to save the world, there's genuine fear behind his words. The conflict between Paradise and Marley has reached a breaking point that even he cannot control, so he draws on all the political power he can muster to unite the world against a single terrible threat. Willie's grandiose declaration of war turns into a last-ditch attempt at deterrence. He sets himself up as a target, acting as both orchestrator and willing victim. This makes Willie as more than cynical manipulator, caught in the same mechanism of sacrifice as everyone else, confronted with impossible choices that however hasten the very disaster he seeks to contain. We've seen violence managed through institutions and seen how these social structures channel and disguise it. However, these processes rest upon something even more fundamental. We'll now dig deeper into the biological dimensions that we've already touched on when discussing the Titan Curse. In Attack on Titan, the distinction between social and biological is deliberately blurred. What binds Eldians isn't merely cultural tradition or political necessity, but literally inscribed in flesh and blood, passed down across generations through paths invisible to ordinary perception. This biological foundation undergirds the social mechanisms we've examined, showing how mimetic desire penetrates into the very fabric of being. It began with an act of liberation. Accused of this, an armless slave girl was savagely hunted down, arrows stuck in her body, and she couldn't even scream, her tongue being cut off. She found sanctuary in the dark pit of a warped tree, a serene hollow that frames the liberating moment which comes with the loss of all hope. And then the inconceivable happened, as if in response to a voiceless prayer, a lone worm-like primordial creature bound to her, setting off the Titan curse, a dark Eve who was never given the chance to refuse. From this originating violent act, the Titan curse will shape the history of the human race for generations. What we observed in social structures now manifests as something carnal. Girard saw mimetic desire transmitted through imitation and becoming cultural inheritance, but attackontitan pushes this further. The transfer occurs through literal consumption, passed down via blood and ingestion of spinal fluid. It absorbs memories and desires. At the origin of this curse lies an entity referred to as the source of all living matter. Despite the name, this creature is actually parasitic in nature and requires a symbiotic relationship. In fact, like a parasite, it eagerly attaches to a host. For what purpose does it require a host? We get no definitive answer, but its spine-like body and lack of a distinct head may reveal its devious nature. It grants its host the power to impose one's own will, while itself being fundamentally aimless and in need of direction. The parasite's physical appearance is borrowed from the Lucigenia, a Cambrian period creature. It resembles a vertebrate spine with jutting limbs, recalling neural pathways, and even the fractal extension of tree branches. These designs visually link physical composition and symbolic patterns to mimetic desire. Just as desire pulls us, the tendrils of the spine control the body like puppet strings. It is a being that embodies the essence of earthly existence, representing the very core of material life on this plane. Yet it could be equally perceived as an alien entity infiltrating our biology. It's a perfect representation of mimetic desire's empty core. Its desire is the pursuit of desire. As we see with Eren's decapitation, it reaches for his severed head, blending into his body and will and warping them until they are barely Eren's anymore. It is the source of all living matter, but is it itself alive? The sameless desire dreads not only the parasite's host, but also the human-eating pure titans it spawns. Like zombies, they pursue what they cannot grasp without even being aware of it. This insatiable hunger displays desire at its most basic level, stripped of all pretense and cultural disguises. Pure titans consume blindly, driven by an unconscious urge that feeds violent cycles, which is very close to what communities do through rituals and scapegoating. Societies do not know what they do when they sacrifice victims to preserve social order, just as pure titans mindlessly chase their biological void. This dark impulse is rooted in a parasitic organism and foreshadows the biological system that binds us. The massive tree concealing the titan organism, which we will see in the very last scene as well, acts as the ominous symbol of a biological reality. Upon closer examination, its structure reveals what appears to be two humanoid figures, male and female, fusing together, their bodies twisting into a spiral that suggests the twin strands of DNA, inherited violence and desire programmed into the very architecture of life. Two entities, separate yet connected, orbiting one another in endless relation, like rivals or lovers trapped in duality, never completely merging, never escaping their dance. This biological picture morphs Girard's framework from the mimetic to the material. Desire is not only social, but is inscribed in our very cells, our very structure. But the webs of desire and violence extend even further than the physical and the cultural. As the parasite binds to spine and blood, it bridges reality and time itself. In the paths, those tendrils grow, revealing the full scope of desire's reach and binding power. We now enter the paths, a domain where these ties stretch beyond flesh into something unfathomable. Girard maintains that mimetic desire is a force that unites and separates us through unseen bonds. In Attackontitan, the source of that force is metaphysical, beyond the material, and is conveyed from the past. There, Ymir's distorted will, her love for a cruel man, fuels a glowing network that links all Eldians, past and future. The bright strands of the path's dimension stand in stark contrast to the dark parasite and the tree that harbors it. One radiant and ethereal, the other primordial and physical, yet manifesting the same force. But it's more than a setting. Psychoanalyst Carl Jung may have seen it as a representation of the collective unconscious, while Girard as a web of desires that underlie human decisions, where each person's wants connect to all members of the network rather than being restricted to a single mind, a collective intelligence, a limbic system, or even an egregore. The paths tie all Eldians, their ambitions and destinies entwined into a single system so profound it binds bodies, minds, and history itself. The paths offer a magnificent view of the night sky realm, possibly humanity's oldest source of guidance. Celestial bodies flare against the endless darkness of the heavens, while the desert sands below mirror the earth. Yet these are false stars that don't guide but compel Eldians toward a predetermined end. Where actual stars provided navigation and orientation throughout human history, the path's star-like branches form a closed system that only appears to offer transcendence while actually binding its subjects. Ancient cultures often viewed constellations as divine threads woven across the heavens, bridging celestial patterns to mortal affairs. In the past, these mythic metaphors become literal. Filaments of light spiral outward to entangle all of Ymir's descendants in the same recursive pattern. At its center is the coordinate, where all the paths that connect Eldians through time and space converge. Around it orbits Ymir, who has a similar role to the Moirai of Greco-Roman mythology, the three fates who spun, measured and cut the threads of human destiny. She meticulously crafts titans grain by grain in the infinite desert, weaving the fate of the Eldian people. Ymir may at first seem like the demiurge, who according to Gnosticism rules the world he himself created, but in actuality she is but a prisoner, her immense power confined to a cage of never-ending sand and no walls. What appears to be autonomy, independence or control may actually hide unbreakable chains of submission, as Girard pointed out. The paths represent a seemingly limitless system that in fact locks its user. This web is creation itself. Ymir, obeying her compelled servitude, molds titan forms in the paths, and the lightning materializes her creations in the physical world. What exists as thought in the metaphysical realm becomes flesh through these luminous channels. The lightning strikes we witness during transformations vividly represent this passage, the exact moment when Ymir's crafted forms cross the threshold into physical reality. The paths thus function as the workshop where mimetic violence is forged into tangible power, where intention becomes action, where will becomes power. The paths transcend time itself, allowing desire and knowledge to flow backwards and forwards. Consider when Kruger, the owl, mentions Mika's and Armin to Grisha, names he couldn't possibly know. Whose memory are these, he wonders, briefly possessed by another consciousness from the future. This is not ordinary foreshadowing, but desire that breaks beyond time and minds, demonstrating how the self can be penetrated across generations. Girard described mimetic desire as infectious, but attackontitan takes this a step further. Grisha later protects these children he has never met. He acts on a desire not yet born, inherited from a future not yet realized. The present just becomes another node in the web, no more important than the past or the future, all linked together by the bright branches. These luminous threads, so delicate and subtle now, will soon march as immense wall titans, with Ymir, the victim goddess, and Eren, the willing slave, at the helm, an apocalyptic force no wall can hold. The foundations are shaking and the walls already crumbling, both literally and figuratively. As the distinctions between us and them, humans and titans, and even past and futures blur, institutions struggle to keep violence and strife under control. As we conclude the second part, we find ourselves nearing a threshold. The groundwork has been laid. We've seen how personal relationships and conflicts serve as the building blocks that form societies and sustain them. Part 3 will show the consequences when the system eventually cracks. The basement in Shingekinokyojin will bring forth truths that institutions can suppress, and the subsequent breakdown of religious control will allow violence to become apocalyptic rather than systematic. Finally, one young boy's obsession will entangle the whole world, becoming a global scandalon. That is where we're headed. The rumbling, where all boundaries fall. The center cannot hold.